welcome to the last top 5 for the Hearthstone Titans expansion. In this video, I will give you the 5 best decks in Hearthstone right now before the new expansion launches on November the 14th, so you guys maybe can hit Legend before that, or climb higher. Anyway, I'm gonna show you 5 of the best decks, as well as their mulligans, win rates, and some general tips for them, but we will also go over all of the other working archetypes for each individual class, so stick around to the end. Blizzard was nice enough to give me 3 regular bundles to give away, so I'll be giving away 1 code for this video, and all you have to do is leave a comment what's your favorite Hearthstone deck right now, and I will be drawing the winner in a few days from now. I'll be giving away the other code live on Twitch on the future streams in the next week, and I'll keep one for myself because I'm only human. Anyway, if you're serious about Hearthstone, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Now, let's check out the decks.
You are not prepared!
The first deck is obviously gonna be Enrage Warrior because it has been doing an absolute killing in the last couple of weeks after the latest nerfs. Right now this seems to be the best variant out there, and it has above 61% win rate with above 1000 games for the last 3 days, so that really is something. This variant is not even running the big cards like Remornia or Growmash, which honestly feels kinda weird, but the stats don't lie. And instead we have an extra Roaring Applause, we obviously still have at least Okra, and the rest is pretty much standard in Rage Warrior right now. The new Battle Swarm Faces is definitely very amazing in the deck, and you could be using it on your own minions, but don't forget you can also use it on the opponent's damaged minions, and it basically works like a reverberation without the 1 damage effect. The only downside to this card would be that Anima Extractor can be wasting buffs on it, because once you use it to copy, you lose those buffs. We also have Steam Guardian in this one, which can give you some nice discounts for your fire spells, and you could high roll with even a turn 4 or 5 Trial by Fire that way. And with Roaring Applause, you could be drawing quite a lot of cards, because you have several tribes in this one, including Undead, and the chicken in here is also Undead/Beast, so that can also help you out. And we also have the Steam Guardian as Elemental, but don't try to go super hard with this one, usually drawing a couple of cards with this is more than fine. And yeah, with this deck you have several different ways of actually playing it, like depending on the situation you could just try and aggro the opponent, or you could try to OTK them from hand with a very buffed up charge minion with the help of Anima Extractor, or you can try anything in between. So it's definitely not a simple deck to climb with, but it's very effective once you get the hang of it. Matchup wise, here's what the stats show, and Big Rogue is definitely not gonna be your friend, and same goes for Control Priest a lot of the times, even though against them you just try to OTK them. But they could do some silly things like Dirty Rat your big minion, so there's that too. Thaddeus Warlock is actually very good against you, but the rest looks pretty good. As for the mulligan, going first and second, Tori Belor is always going to be insane, your location as well, the Foul Leg, apparently Acolyte of Pain is also pretty nice, Anima Extractor is also huge, Steam Guardian gives you some nice potential as well. Depending on the matchup, Sun Fury Champion could be insane, like if you play this on turn 1 against the Paladin, they're going to be very sad. And also Embers of Strength is actually very nice as well, and comboing this with Anima Extractor can be very hard to deal with early on. The weapon is also pretty great, but for the rest you gotta have a good reason to consider them. As for When on the Coin, it's not much different than that, but people seem to be overkeeping Jam Session when going second, so be careful with that one. For other good warrior decks right now, Control Warrior is also actually doing pretty nicely, and we have several other iterations of Enrage Warrior with Remornia, with Growmash, with both of them, with none of them. And yeah, Control Warrior is still nice and they're still actually using Yogg because they are no stranger to turn 9. But yeah, those will be your 2 different archetypes for Warrior right now. On the number 2 spot, we have the other big winner of the nerfs, which is Aggro Pally. Aggro Paladin has been pretty nice for quite a while now, but we've never seen this many iterations of different Paladin lists out there, and you could be going very minion heavy, very weapon heavy, and anything in between. And this one is just that. It's definitely in between because you're still running a Horn of the Windlord, you're still running the Pure package, but you also run tons of buffs, and a lot of small minions to actually tempo out nice and quick. We also have Buffet Biggin, which is very sticky, and with the help of Crusader Aura, all of your small idiots become not so small anymore. And something pretty cool you could be doing is actually put Crusader Aura even on an empty board, and on turn 5 you could do some nasty stuff like even Blood Matriarch Liadrin into a muster for battle, and that way these small idiots are gonna be a lot better, and they're gonna be getting the buff instantly through Crusader Aura like that. But obviously that's not gonna be amazing against any opponent. You gotta be smart about the potential removals you could be facing. Matchup wise, we really don't have that much stats on this variant, so let's look at something different. And for the list with Kotori, this is what the situation looks like. Enrage War is definitely not gonna be your friend. Miracle Rogue, if you manage to find one, is also not great. Frost Death Knight can also be pretty hard because they're gonna freeze your board, and Outcast Demon Hunter is also pretty quick. It's actually kind of strange that we're not running Katori in this one, because that definitely could be very amazing, and as soon as turn 3 or 4 you could be doubling up your Hand of a Doll like that, but the stats for this one are also very promising. Instead of Katori, we are running a class action Lawyer, which definitely is a pretty good card. But yeah, if you don't have Katori, this list definitely is better. And actually the stats show it to be better altogether, so yeah, there's that. For the mulligan again, we're gonna be using the Katori variant. And here's what it looks like going first. And in both cases, you're always gonna want your Boogie Down, your Sanguine Soldier. Righteous Protector is also not bad because it has Divine Shield, so it makes it a lot stickier. Buffet Biggin is also great, but try to be curving into it already somewhat, especially when going first. Sinful Sous Chef is also great, but try not to be keeping too many 1-drops, like that's what we have Boogie Down for in the end of the day. Muster for Battle is pretty nice, and Blood Matriarch Liadrin can also be pretty good depending on the matchup. If you already have a sticky Divine Shield minion, Hand of a Doll can also be a good keep. And depending on the matchup, even Keeper's Strength might make some sense in some cases. When on the coin, again it's pretty much the same, but Keeper's Strength become a lot better. Countess also has higher win rate here, but not many people keep it as much, and you honestly shouldn't, unless you're against, let's say, Heart Control, and in that case Countess definitely can't help a lot. Your 1-drops are still great, Muster is still nice, and Katori can also make some sense, but be careful what you keep it against. And let's not forget we don't have Katori in this one, so there's that. For other good Paladin lists, like I said, we have so many different iterations of Pally right now. Here's a Silverhand Pally list, which is running the Warhorse Trainers, which is doing great. Like I said, this aggro Pally is doing best right now. Here you can see the difference between the class action and the Katori Paladin, and yeah, we have almost a whole percent bigger, even though the sample size is smaller, so take it with a grain of salt, but we also have a lot of different cards in this one, so there's that. Here's actually the other variant, which is running Katori instead of class action, and we have a lot more sample size, but the percent is like 4% less, so definitely not small. And yeah, we even have just aggro Paladins, which are not running the pure package, and so on and so forth. On the number 3 spot, we also have Thaddeus Warlock actually doing very strong lately, especially with druids out of the way. This variant is running Chaotic Consumption, which does help you against some big minions, and it's not running the 3-mana Habeas Corpses, which definitely does shine in certain cases, but it can also be a flop in others. We're obviously running the great Thaddeus package with Shallow Grave, Amorphous Slime, Infantry Reanimator, Loken helps you fish out some fat minions as well, and with Flesh Behemoth you're also guaranteed to draw one of the other undeads in the deck, which would be Darkon, as well as Thaddeus. A cool thing to note with Thaddeus Warlock is, if you actually play Thaddeus from hand, he's gonna be on the polarity depending on the turn you play it. Like, if you're on an odd turn, like let's say turn 9, this is gonna be discounting odd cards. But if you're on an even turn, let's say turn 10, you're gonna be discounting even cards. So this is a quick way of remembering that. But if you actually summon Thaddeus from other sources, like let's say Death Rattle from Flesh Behemoth, Death Rattle from Slime, the Habeas Corpses if we have that, the Infantry, you're always gonna get Thaddeus with the discount on odd cards, no matter what the turn is. So that's a very nice way to actually get a little bit of extra edge and know preemptively what you will be discounting before you actually pull Thaddeus from nowhere. You could also double up the Thaddeus effect with the help of Reverberations, which can be pretty huge, and in certain cases it actually makes a lot of sense. Or you could use Reverberation to double up your Darkon a couple of times for 18 damage face with Lifesteal, which can be OTK like that. And yeah, you have so many different ways of actually maximizing the potential of this deck, and it's very, very strong right now, especially if you know how to play well against aggro, and not just throw your good Defiles or Mortal Eradications on the first couple of idiots you see. Match-wise, here's what the stats show, and Priests are definitely not gonna be your friends. Rainbow Mage can be a little bit tricky, even though with the help of the Symphony you could be burning their Sif and whatnot, but everything else looks pretty nice. And it's also pretty nice against Enraged Warriors, so that's very good. As for the mulligan, we're gonna have to look at a different list with, like I said, Habeas Corpse is a lot more popular than the chaotic Consumption, but the win rate is a lot lower, but even though it's still a pretty amazing deck, honestly, and I have coached people to Legend with it too, which is pretty good. But here's what the stats show going first. Going first or second location is always going to be great. Depending on the matchup, you also are going to want to keep Amorphous Slime, but if you're against aggro and you don't have already some good removal, you might want to stray away from this. Imposing Anubisad is usually always great. Flesh Behemoth, it's not really something you're gonna straight up keep, I'd say. Like, you have several different ways of actually pulling good stuff, so I'd rather really toss this in most scenarios. Habeas Corpses is also not something you're ever gonna keep. I'm not sure why the win rate is this high here. Mortal Eradication and Default definitely are amazing against aggro matchups. Symphony of Sin can be great in all cases, and if you're against aggro, you want to be curving into this, but if you're against control, you're always gonna want it. Just be careful not to play it after the opponent plays his ETC, because they probably picked Steam Cleaner and that's gonna pick you clean. And yeah, Shallow Grave, it's not something you're gonna be keeping straight off the bat. You're gonna want to draw into it, or you already have like a perfect hand, like if you already have Amorphous Slime, and in that case maybe you can also keep Shallow Grave, but again be careful depending on the matchup. Scourge Supplies is usually pretty nice, and Drain Soul can also make sense against aggro matchups. Also, if you're playing against Rogue, you probably always are going to want to keep a Reverberation, because that is definitely going to be a lifesaver for you, and it works pretty nice against Enrage Warriors as well, because you could just straight up 1 damage kill something like a Anima Extractor, or even copy a very buffed up minion like that too. The rest probably not so great. Even though honestly against the Pally, keeping a Sir Finley can also be pretty huge. When on the coin, again it's very much similar things. I wouldn't really be keeping Infantry ever, that's just wishful thinking. I wouldn't really keep Sir Garrus either. And yeah, these two, maybe if you already have a perfect hand like Amorphous Slime and the Shallow Grave already, but again, I'd much rather look for things like Defile, like Mortal Eradication, like Drain Soul, so be careful. Like, you don't always just want to high roll the big idiots yet. Like, sometimes you just control the board long enough till the big idiots come on their own anyway. For other good Warlock decks, Control Warlock is doing also pretty good, and we have several different iterations of it, including a 40 variant and whatnot. Thaddeus Warlock also has several iterations, but Curse Warlock right now is in the dumpster. On the number 4 spot we also have Rainbow Mage, and this one's actually running a star power in here so it can help against big board decks. And we're no longer running the Titan in here, which honestly was pretty good, and it did give you literally an extra game plan with the help of Reverberations to do 20 damage like that if the opponent can't deal with it. But I guess nowadays people play around that a lot better. The rest of the deck is very standard Rainbow Mage. You can check out my last top 5 if you want to hear a little bit more in-depth thoughts about it, but yeah, let's just go over the matchups. We are going to use a similar deck with Narganon, which has a lot better representation, even though a lot less stats. Even though a lot less win rate, but still. And as you can see, Enrage War is going to be hard matchup, Relic Demon Hunter as well, and Aggro Pally is also in the red a little. For the mulligan, going first and second, Prismatic Elemental is always going to be great. Arcane Artificer is definitely not bad, especially against Paladins. Cold Case is awesome. Wouldn't really be keeping the Wisdom of Norganon in most situations, probably never. Arcane Worm is also pretty good, Cosmic Keyboard is nice. Discovery of Magic is also not terrible, even though it's a lot better playing it after you've actually played out your Frost, Arcane, and Fire spells. It's still not a bad thing to consider. And Inquisitive Creation can also be pretty good depending on the matchup. Flame Geyser is also something you might want to consider depending on what you're playing against. As for when on the coin, Volume Up becomes a lot more keepable here, Cold Case still great, Geyser becomes amazing, Worm is nice, Lady Najjar not really something I'd consider keeping too much, and many people wouldn't either, but the win rate's pretty nice for it, so there's that. Cosmic Keyboard still great, Molten Rune can be acceptable, Inquisitive Creation becomes even better here in my opinion, Discovery of Magic still not bad, Prismatic Elemental a lot worse here, and I kinda don't agree on that one, like it's still a pretty nice thing to be doing on turn 2. But I guess it's a lot better playing Weapon on turn 2 into a turn-free Cold Case, so maybe that's the logic behind these stats. Arcane Artificer, not really something you're gonna be keeping when going second, because you don't want to tempo it on a full board already. Reverberation, however, again, if you're against the Rogue, definitely consider keeping it. And even against the Thaddeus Warlock, it can be huge, like you could even copy their Amorphous Slime, and that is gonna give you an extra copy of a big undead like that, so keep that. So yeah, be wary of that potential. For other good mage decks right now, it's honestly just mage decks. Elemental Mage is under 50, Spooky Mage is barely on 50, and stats are very small for it. Mech Mage is actually somewhat acceptable. Again, very small sample size, but positive win rate, so might as well call it out. And there is an actual decent Spooky Mage out there as well, but I don't know, I'm pretty sure Rainbow is just a lot better and safer for you. And on the last spot again we have Unholy Decay, which has been quite the good deck for quite a while now, like really nothing new in this one, it's straight up just triple Unholy, with Primus at the end, Marigar and Sylvanas and Magatha, and we're only running 2 spells in this one with Grave Strength, and the rest is just the standard Unholy package. Matchup-wise, in Rage War is a little bit on the red, everything else looks pretty doable though. For the mulligan going first, Magata is actually something you might consider if you already have a decent curve, but usually you want your Body Bagger. If you have that, you can also consider Vicro Necrolite, Arms Dealer is great, Vizier. Door Guide is also not bad because it gives you a corpse on turn 1, and in that case Battle Necromancer becomes a lot better as well. And if you already have a good curve going, even School Teacher might make sense. Depending on the matchup, Hawkstrider on curve can also be huge, so keep that in mind. And when on the coin, it's pretty much the same thing, even though Sylvanas becomes pretty good here as well, but yeah, the rest looks pretty much the same thing. For other good Death Knight decks, we also have Blood Death Knight with above 52% win rate, which is decent. There's also Unholy Plague Decay, which is above 53, almost 54 actually. Frost Death Knight almost looked promising, but apparently it's just not as good right now. Like, I tried the deck myself, we did do somewhat well with it, but we couldn't really find too much board-centric matchups, because matchmaking is not rigged, but you know how that goes. But yeah, for the classes we haven't mentioned, let's start off with Demon Hunter, and here we have Relic DH with above 53 with a decent sample size. We also have a different iteration with above 52.5, which is pretty decent too. And Outcast Demon Hunter is also playable, even though it's not the monster of a deck it used to be. With Druid right now, your only way to go would be Drum Druid, honestly, even though Trent Druid is also doing somewhat well. Hunter has a lot less representation now, but it's still a decent deck, with Arcane Hunter sitting at 58% with a small sample size. And this one is running some secret action going. We also still have a Secret Hunter with Yag included. I don't think that's very much correct, but this is what the stats show. Hound Hunter barely above 50, so I wouldn't really be touching that one. And yeah, that's about it for Hunter. With Priest, Control Priest actually is sitting at the top with very small sample size, but still scary good win rate. Undead Priest, however, has a lot more stats, but the win rate is 5 less. But still, Undead Priest is a lot faster and a lot simpler to actually pilot decently well. We also have a less win rate Control Priest with decent sample size somewhat, and that's about it for Priest. For Rogues, Mech Rogue is still a very strong deck. There's also the Big Mech Rogue, which is running the nonsense Neptulon combo with the Thunderbringer. I don't know, like, it sounds like a fat gimmick to me. It's gonna work for you like one game and 10, and in that one game the opponent probably deals with it on the same turn, so that can be pretty dumb. But it definitely does feel nice when it actually happens for you, but I don't know, I think it's just a downside to Mech Rogue. Like, Mech Rogue standalone is probably just better. Miracle Rogue is actually still having some decent stats, but with a very small sample size. There's also this weird Concoction Rogue, which is doing somewhat okay. But yeah, I'd just stick around with straight up Mech Rogue for Rogue right now. With Shaman, only Totem Shaman is above 50% and not by much. So that's not too great for the class, and there's also Nature Shaman out there, but it's kinda very tricky right now. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Hope this helps you figure out what you want to be playing in the last few days of this expansion. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and enter the giveaway for a regular Hearthstone bundle. And also don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Thanks for watching, I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video, or stream.